everyone. I'm here with Stacy Jata with the Unmuted Life. She does the podcast called The Unmuted Life, and she helps people to lead unmuted life, correct?
Yep, I do.
So
At least I try to do.
So welcome to my show.
Thank
I
you.
am so excited to have you. And the reason, because when I met you first time, when you said, oh, I'm with Unmuted Life, I did not really put a lot of thought to it, because I feel like now I'm thinking maybe because I was living muted life, maybe I wasn't feeling it. So that's how we miss the chance, right, to get better.
Mm-hmm.
So I kind of wanted, I guess, to get your point of view. What is unmuted life, in your view, and how do you see it, and how can people, catch it like on time and not just living through life muted for 10, 20 years,
Well, I think it depends on, thanks for having me. I'm not used to being the one being interviewed. I'm used to being on the other side. Yeah. But I believe that we're all on a journey, right? So if you would have asked me 10, 15 years ago, what's living an unmuted life, the stage in my journey was to be my best self, right? That was just the stage, be my best self. It was really centered, believe it or not, about me, which is funny because people think that's what unmuted is. And the other thing, people think it's being really, really loud, being the loudest, always expressing everything that's on your mind, always telling your truth. And as time progressed and as my journey continued, and the way the unmuted life came about is it's actually a little different than all of those things, and it has a biblical context. And it's when the angel Gabriel came to Zechariah and said, hey, you're going to have a son and you're going to do this and you're going to name him John. And he was like, oh, and the angel Gabriel muted Zechariah. And because he wasn't doing the will of God the way that God was asking him to do it, he was muted. And then when John was born and he wrote down his name, and then he became unmuted. And his first thing he did when he became unmuted was to give praise to God.
Oh, wow.
And so when we're living an unmuted life, what we should aspire to be doing is God's will first. What does he will for us? He always is going to will the best thing for us. We get in our way. Because we think we know better. And so, so that's, I guess, the first part of being unmuted is to be unmuted in the joy of God and living how he desires us to live, because he created us for a purpose. And often we don't even know the purpose. Sometimes we're just meandering. We feel like we're meandering, but he is directionalizing us. And at the same time, he's given us all talents and gifts. And a lot of times we've muted those gifts. So because we're afraid of, like, maybe you have a beautiful voice, but you won't use it, right? Or maybe you're just singing the wrong tune, right? But are we singing it the way he wants us to sing? So it takes us to, what are your gifts that he's given you? How can you water those gifts to help them grow? How can you pull the weeds so you can shine brighter and grow bigger and brighter? And how can we give praise? And all those things combined make an unmuted life.
Yeah. No, totally. I so relate to the story you just saying, right? Like muted. I feel like, like I kind of hearing my backstory, right? You saying, I feel like I was gifted, but I just didn't know. Like I didn't know how to praise God properly because I wasn't taught to do that. And so I feel like all my life, I believe most of us, we are like a control freak, right? We control everything.
Mm-hmm.
We want to control every outcome of our life. In the end, most of the time, the control becomes a disaster, right? Mm-hmm. And I wouldn't say necessarily bad disaster, but it doesn't sometimes turn out the way we wanted mm-hmm. or we hoped. But we kind of, okay, I guess. And then at that time we say, I guess it's God will, So in a way, I feel like, like I said, now I about fulfilled life, because like I said, for me it was like a light turned on. So as light turned on, now I see unmuted life sounds different than I met you a year ago, you know. Um and I think it just, life is so interesting. And like you're saying, using the skill set, most of the time we use it the wrong way, right? Or we don't know how to like be positive, and we as humans become self-centered.
That's our nature. We want to become our own God.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And so we want to design, and we want to do everything the way we think it to be fit. But we've actually been given guides and instruction. And then if we would just kind of turn to that a little bit more, we would find that life in a lot of ways gets a little easier. In some ways, I mean, life's a struggle. I heard someone say once, he said, life is not a cruise ship, it's a battleship. And it's true. Life is full of struggles. But there is joy in that. And somebody recently was telling me her life is hard right now, very, very difficult. And I feel bad for her. She's going through a period of growth. Yeah. And so we're constantly being formed through that growth. And we're either going to get better or we're going to get bitter. But if you believe that there's purpose behind you, there's purpose behind your life, that there is a divine creator, and that he has a great story for us to evolve. And we're part of a tapestry that's beautiful. And, you know, you take that tapestry and you look on one side, it's the ugly side, right? That's the earth side. And you look at the other side and the tapestry is beautiful. That's the heaven side, right? But every thread in the tapestry has a place and a purpose. And we're all part of that tapestry. And it takes everybody to make this beautiful piece of art. So this friend's going through a difficult time, but she's going through a place of struggle so that she can grow, because we can't get anywhere without struggle. Otherwise, you're just living a very dull, veiled life.
Yeah, lonely, frustrating.
It's in the struggle that you are formed. You're formed through fire in a way, you know, you're formed through that. But to know that there's more, and you just keep plugging away and you have faith in it, and it will get you through to the next level of your growth, because life is hard. I mean, there's no doubt.
Well, it is hard, but it also as hard as you want to make it. Right?
Exactly.
Like,
it's hard as you want to make it.
If you're dwelling over your problems, I mean, we all have problems, but it's kind of, I started looking at it differently lately, because I always imagine like a plant. And if I'm watering that negative side of it, of course it's going to grow, continue to grow. Versus if you kind of like, okay, it's kind of a weed, let's pull it off and start watering positive side. And like you said, putting intention to it. And that was my perspective change, you know. Like I say, I used to like, you know, call my friends and like dwell over some things that didn't satisfy me as a human or wasn't in my control. But since I stopped doing that, but more of it putting an effort, what I can do today, like not even worrying tomorrow, because nobody's promised tomorrow, right? What I can do now to feel better in the next few hours and so on. So it's very interesting, you know, like the unmuted life, like you were saying, most of us, especially husbands, can we mute you while watching TV? Because we like to talk.
My husband a week or so ago said something about somebody not saying something or whatever, and I said, well, that's because a man solves a problem in 7 words and it takes a woman about 3 pages.
Yeah.
Like, you know, we communicate differently. But on the topic of growth though, and watering, part of it is we have to remember that we have seasons.
Yeah.
Right. So we're coming into the fall season now. Looking outside, it's still pretty. This is a beautiful time of year, but things are going to start to die. The grass dies, the flowers die, leaves fall off the trees. We have seasons. We are the same as humans. We have moments that parts of us, you know, will fade so that they can regenerate in the spring. So we go through those same phases in a way, different periods of our lives where things have to kind of fade and die, and then they regenerate and bloom again. And when they bloom, as long as we're watering, cultivating, then what will happen is those flowers have beautiful blooms.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Definitely. I mean, I love nature, so whenever you're describing, I'm imagining all these flowers in my head.
The scary part is I don't have a green thumb. So like in my house, it's like survival of the fittest is my rule. So it's possible that if it's green, it's going to die. And my husband, how did you raise kids? And I'm like, well, they're okay because I just toss some food their way. Yeah, all right. So not a green thumb, but anyways.
Yeah. No, I actually thought I am not a green thumb. But I went and bought a bunch of plants. Half of it died, but half of it's still growing. So I think
there's hope.
Yeah, exactly. I was going to tell you, there is hope to shift and learn new skill set. Because the reason for me, I love plants, I love trees, but I always was afraid to kill them. So I didn't nurture them. But now I just go water them, and if they die, I say I'm sorry.
Some of the most fascinating people that I have met in my life are all people that never stopped learning and growing, making goals, and having dreams. Because sometimes as we get older, life can seem boring or monotonous. Some people, as they get older, think that it's not worth it, I guess, in a way. But I remember having a client, and he was in his 80s. He was wonderful. I think he was like 85 or 86. He would take me to lunch. We would visit about whatever. He always had something he was innovating or thinking about or getting ready to do. He was always learning something new, and he was always innovating. And he was in his 80s. And I was inspired by that because, as we do get older, it's easy to get in that rut. And Maru, you're a great example of, you're always trying to learn something else. Even today, we're learning something new. It's uncomfortable, but we're doing it, right? And having that ability to have a desire to keep growing is actually part of the plan. It's part of it. We are designed with intelligence and creativity, and we should be using that all the time. And my mother also, she'll always have a trip planned. Why? So she always has something to look forward to. Always has something to look forward to. Even right now, we're a little stuck these days. We have a little COVID-itis, where we're all hanging out inside. But we can still have a plan for something, to make a goal or be learning something new in a period that kind of seems a little bit like a drought. It's a great time to cultivate our inner spirit and maybe rethink what our priorities really are and make some adjustments. So
and I think definitely one thing I can kind of add to your speech is, like, if you are doing something for a long time, it's not working. It's time to change, right? You can't keep doing the same thing and then continue to be unhappy because this isn't working. There is new ways. There are so many ways, especially we live in the age of social media, Google. I mean, I just remember, I tell my kids, when I was little, I didn't have Google. I couldn't look up my homeworks. I mean, I could barely go to library. Maybe we had a small library, but nowadays there are so many books, and I mean, if you want it, it's all out there. Of course, they're not gonna come the books and jump in your head. I used to put the book under my pillow when I was little, in hopes that when I wake up, I know all my homework. But that life didn't work that way. Learned it at the early age of elementary school. So I think I jump into the unmuted life conversation because I get so passionate about it. And so just tell me a little bit about yourself, like kind of your background, what led you to like doing podcast about the unmuted life. There was, I'm sure, that growth or some change in your life happened that led you to it.
Well, good question. So my original degree, it's funny, you can see a path sometimes. You go all the way back in your childhood and go, I can see where all these little threads took me someplace. Life is fun when you can identify the path. And as a child, in the fourth grade, I had a cassette tape player. That's how old I am. I had a cassette tape player. If y'all don't know what that is, it's like this little tiny cassette that goes into a player and it tapes what you say. It was really something. So I had one of those, and I would record a show in my room called Stacy's New News. So I started then. And I was always interested in journalism. I love to research. I love to read, even at those young ages. So my degree ended up being in radio, television, and film. But I was also extremely shy. And I actually had a professor tell me, you will never be in radio as a broadcaster, because my speech wasn't traditional. So, which means I talk like a Southerner. Let's translate that. Yeah. But, there's a desire, things start to happen and doors start to open. And so over the course of time, I ended up doing public speaking and seminars and things like that with different jobs and career paths I had. And then it just never left me, that desire. And our technology has changed to the point to where we can do things we never thought possible 30 years ago, right? So I guess for 18 months, it was just on my heart to do a podcast and to take people's stories, which fascinate me, and help those people tell their stories. And at the same time, use it as a place where maybe people can be cultivated through their spirit and their own gifts and their own talents, possibly inspire them on their own journey to keep looking, keep growing, and not be afraid to really step into their light that's there for them.
Mm-hmm. You mentioned a word, afraid. I think that's one thing that keeps a lot of people back, like the fear of something, fear of unknown, fear of what if, fear of what other people might say. I mean, what would you say to, I guess, overcoming that fear? And I'm sure, like I say, we all have fear. It doesn't go away forever, but there is a way to kind of like go around it.
Well, fear has purpose. So fear is an honest thing. Fear is meant to help us survive. Right? I mean, if you see a great big bear coming, you don't really run towards the bear, right? Because we should be afraid of the bear, we should run away. Yeah. So fear is healthy in a sense, because it helps us maybe take a moment and evaluate the situation on, is this something to move towards or move away from? But then there's unhealthy fear where you become anxious and panicked, and that's an unhealthy fear. And especially if it's stunting your ability to grow or to form relationships, or to break free of things that might be holding you back, because you're afraid of what's on the other side, afraid of commitment, afraid if it doesn't work out, afraid of success, all those things. I, as a kid, would take the things I was most afraid of or I disliked the most and do them first. So my nature was to run towards whatever made me mad.
Yeah. Let's get it out of the way.
Get it out of the way. Dive in. Don't research. Just jump in and go. I still am that way to a degree. But if you're really trying to overcome a fear, I think one of the best tools to use is this. Fear / anxiety and excitement provide the same feeling in the body, right? When you're excited about something, you're like, oh yeah, but when you have fear, you actually have that same feeling, or anxiety, you have that same feeling. It's the word you attach to it. So when you say, oh, I'm afraid, well, suddenly you're like, oh, I'm afraid. But if you say I'm excited, guess what? You're moving towards it. So if it's something you really want to do, I would attach a different word to it.
So the way you translate your feelings, so you have to translate it the right way to be more productive, I guess.
And maybe not the right way, but the way that needs to be
more positive side of
used for what you want your outcome to be, right? Yeah. So because your mind is very powerful. So if you're telling your mind, you're not afraid, you're excited. And if you, I'm excited to do this, I'm excited to do this, I'm going to do this. Oh my gosh, I'm so excited to do this. What starts to happen is you believe it, and then you go do it. So your words mean a lot. And then the other thing is pull the Band-Aid off and just do it. You're going to be bad until you're good at anything you do. You're going to be bad until you're good. You're going to make mistakes. You're going to fail forward through those mistakes. And you can look back at your first podcast. I can look back at my first podcast. I can look at being a mom. I can look at so many different things where the first time out wasn't great. But when other people see you out there trying and going for it, and you just tell them, hey, I'm figuring it out as I go. Hey, I love what I'm doing, and I know I'm making some mistakes, but it's okay. You're going to inspire others to get out there. We are not perfect creatures. We're just not.
Yeah.
But we can make progress. So we're never going to be perfect. We just get better.
Yeah. I think I had that mindset of I'm perfect because what I learned through my transformation journey is the word perfect. I created that. That's kind of my shield. That when I say I'm perfect, it's like nobody can tell me anything. It was more of it me hiding behind the word. But however, that was my own definition of protection, right? But for the other people, it seemed like, oh, she thinks she's perfect. Like, so the receiver side all received it differently. Some were intimidated. Some were like, nobody's perfect, like they really try to prove the point. And I always argued with them. No, I am perfect. You don't have to see me perfect, but I am perfect my own way. I am perfect for me, Ru, right? So I think it was also as I was growing, it's something that I didn't understand, but as I literally looked into it, okay, what does this perfect mean for me? And I really understood that I was just hiding behind my pain. I was just trying to cope with life. And I think some people may use different words to define them. So I guess luckily for me, I used positive word, right? And it was in a way distractive sometimes because I was pushing a lot of people away. But at the same time, I felt like at least I didn't get into that environment where I was so fearful. I think that also pushes people away, right? I mean, most of the time people want to be attracted to like positivity.
Right. Well, and there's a couple of things about the word perfect. First of all, you're loved perfectly. So you're loved perfectly because you are Maroon. And so that's a beautiful thing. But sometimes when we get into that mode of that self mode, right? Where I'm perfect or I'm the best, or so there's a difference between being confident and being egotistical.
Yeah.
There's a difference. But to be confident and humble at the same time, to have a sense of humility. Humility is a virtue. Humility is something that we should be striving for. Because that in itself lets us know that we're always in a state of growth and that we know that we're a part of creation, not the
part of community.
We're part of something together. We're meant to reach our hand out and help somebody. And in humility, then you have this gift and you're able to say, hey, come with me and I'll help you with yours. Or, hey, whatever it is, we're able to help and assist. And when we have humility, we become approachable. Then the other side of the word perfect is perfectionism. Now, perfectionism was actually my issue, still is, where I want everything to be perfect. It has to be like the tablecloth has to be just right, and the food has to be perfect, and this has to be set up just like this, and it would get in my way of enjoyment because at the end of the day, who cared about the tablecloth? Nobody, just me. Now, it doesn't mean I shouldn't strive to do my best or strive to make things look, but when it sucks the fun out of it, we've got a problem. The other thing is it would hold me back. So instead of moving forward and accomplishing things, it was my crutch to avoid things. So, well, I can't submit this newsletter because it's not perfect. Well, I can't do such and such because it's not perfect. I can't write a book because it's not perfect. Whatever it is, it can be the thing that is your weight that doesn't let you move forward through the mistake or through the imperfection. Imperfections are just the way that it is. And again, that's been a little bit of my own personal struggle because that's my thing.
Yeah. And I think a lot of people struggle with that because we all want to make sure everything done right? You don't want to serve uncooked potatoes, for example. So I'm just
You
like,
don't
I think
want
it's
to,
just
but you could. I mean, you know.
you could, yeah. So I think it's just giving yourself permission, basically, right? That it's okay sometimes not to be perfect.
Mm-hmm.
And then, like I said, now I think, I guess sometimes I'm like ashamed maybe a little bit, but I feel like now I admit I was perfect in my own ways, but I also felt like as I was younger, I was more of it self-centered.
Mm-hmm.
And that's because my mom was spoiling me when I was little, kind of a, what is that? Like how you call this spoiled kids, brats? So I feel like it as through the transformation of my journey, like you said, looking back, looking at my pattern, it's so fascinating. That's why I say get to the bottom of the issue.
Reflection is important.
Yeah.
Reflection is really important. You've got to be able to reflect on you in an honest way so that you can adjust, make amends, and move forward. And when we expect perfection from ourselves, what do you think we're projecting on everybody else? We expect perfection from them,
Yeah.
and they will never live up to that expectation, and that's not fair. Mm-hmm. And so there's so much in that growth of allowing others to be human also, and giving them the grace on their own path and loving them through it. We have to be careful. Even my kids, you know, so they're 16 and 14, almost 15. Oh my gosh. Mm-hmm. We deal a lot with, hey, mom, it didn't work out, I made this. And I'm like, that's okay. Number one, a test grade doesn't define you at all. Number two, where you are right now is perfectly where you're supposed to be. Right now, you're perfectly where you are. And you will continue, that may not get easier, but you will continue to get better because you're going to work towards that. And then finally, just to know that life has plot twists. So we have to learn to adjust. It's not going to be the way we plan it, exactly straight line. This is it. It's going to be perfect. No, life has plot twists. And we always joke around. We're like, okay, plot twist, you know, and let's adjust to whatever's being, you know, what card we've been dealt right now. And so I don't know, just a few thoughts on kids and life. I think it's really important. Your kids are 12? No.
13 and 10 and 23-year-old.
And 23. We have to equip our children for life, how to handle adverse situations, how to bounce back, how to address issues for themselves so that when they're out in the world being adult, we're not raising children, we are raising adults. And are we equipping them to have a successful adult life? And when I say successful, I mean, can they do their dishes? Can they provide a meal on their table? Can they pay their bills, take care of their families? You know, it's not about success. You got to make $1 million. You know, money makes life a little easier for sure. But if you're not equipped to day-to-day living, that money part is going to be hard to come by. So I think it's important that we equip our kids. And I know we talk about that a lot because our kids are, I mean, we're a little partial. We think our kids are awesome.
That's what I tell my kids. You're perfect. I'm teaching them how to be perfect. I think I put a lot of pressure though. Mm-hmm. Like, I guess expecting perfectionism. But I totally relate to what you're saying. Like, literally, my husband says, if it's not like to your standard, it's not good enough. Because like I said, I think with the word perfect, it comes responsibility. So in my head, I'm responsible to make this perfect for you, and I expect that to do for me. So that's kind of my thinking process. But as I said, through my transformation, I learned that I cannot expect, like, I used to get really upset when people ask me like stupid questions, and I'm like, no common sense or what, right? But then, like I said, as I took that transformation journey, I realized, well, it's maybe common sense for me, but not common sense for them. So it literally changed my relationship. Like I said, I I feel like most of my life I was pushing people away. It's because A, they didn't meet my standards. B, you know, they don't understand simple things. So how can I even talk to them without being irritated the whole time, right? So I feel like, you know, because of that, I missed a lot of good opportunities, maybe building relationship with people. But now, like I said, looking back, even like sometimes I tell my husband, I'm looking at myself, like even being inside me right now. It's like I have this old version mirror and a new version mirror. And it took me like you're saying, being honest, understanding the fear differences. Do you run away or do you run towards? Or so it's a lot of work, but also rewarding. Like coming, like literally I feel unmuted now. You know what I mean? Like, and I think that another conversation I want to kind of bring in is like you talking about loving God. So like, okay, new me, I love God. Like I am in this new journey. It, like you said, I feel like the veil was removed. I see things differently. However, the reason I'm asking this question is like, I came across a lot of people like, well, for example, we like your book, but we don't like the fact that you talk about God, right? And I'm like, hey, I'm not here to push my belief on you, but more of it give my transformation journey. So like, how would you like, I guess, have you had any people that you met before? Like, hey, I don't want to talk about God. Like,
There's always going to be people like that. I mean, and it's okay. That is where they are right now. But it wouldn't be true for me to not live the life of loving God. So I love God. I love Christ. And so we have to live that in our day to day because that's the example. And so I figure one day somebody might be having a bad day and they're ready to change. And they're going to go, who do I want to be like? Who lives a life that I could model or I would want to have or that I want to strive for? And if they could go, wow, you know what? Stacy is a good person. She has a bright light. You feel joyful when you're with her. I mean, I hope these things, I hope this is what I do. I'm not great at all of it. Sometimes I'm a big turd. I mean, that's just the way life is. But you hope that you live the true life of Christ. And so you're eventually maybe a little beacon of hope. And then when they're ready, they'll be ready.
Yeah.
And I don't get mad at anybody not loving my stuff because I talk about God. I'm just not for them. I might not be their person. I might not be where they are right now. I may not be the podcast they want to listen to. And that's okay. But I might be what somebody else needs, what somebody else needs to hear, what somebody else. So I just do my thing. I trust that it's all going to work its way out the way it's supposed to. And that maybe, just maybe, I can make a difference. If I made a difference to one person by doing what I was supposed to do, then I did good.
Yeah.
You know,
no, I love it. I love it. I think that's the reason I just asked, because I kind of like to learn others' perspective, like how they handle. But I'm with you. Like I'm with you because, like I say, I'm not here to push, but more of it be light in terms of if I could survive whatever the grief I went through, or if I can learn that extra skill set that I learned that I didn't have a year ago, anybody can do it, right? Like, I mean, I don't want to say like, I can do it, you can do it kind of thing, but we can do it. Like we can do it, help each other, support, and share that positivity. And it's okay to feel sad some days because it is, we are humans, right?
Yeah. And you know, if you go and read early Christian history, and you go look at like what happened right there, in early 100s, 200s, it was a culture of death. It was a culture of death. You know, hanging on the cross was a normal thing. Being killed was a normal thing. If you went against the grain, they killed you. Death was just a way of life. And it's so funny because you can actually see parallels in many ways today. But the Christians were different. They had a different, they believed in life after death. They had hope. They lived their hope. They lived their faith. They stayed true to the teachings, and they lived like that. And people saw that. They saw it. Mm-hmm. And it converted others along the way, because they said, wow, this is so different and full of hope and joy. And then when they heard the story and they understood, there was a great conversion, because what they were being told was they didn't matter. Life has no purpose. There is no value. You die at any minute and it didn't matter. And if you didn't do this, it was just a horrible, horrible place for the human spirit. And so it is up to us to continue to live in light through your book, through your story, through your podcast, to let people know, yeah, we're on a journey. We all are. We're on a ship.
however you want to call it, cruise ship or a battleship.
Sometimes a little bit of both. But there's definitely joy here. There is joy. Yeah. And we are meant to love one another. Yeah. And that love is through our lives. It's through what we do. And you mentioned something earlier, made me think about it. When I get real selfish, I always say, I always feel like my life is like a compass. I don't know if you've heard me say this before, but it's like, when you're true north, that means I'm doing God's will. I'm on true north. And then, your compass sometimes goes off balance a little bit. Mm-hmm. So sometimes it's pointed towards myself, me, the ego. What about me? How do I feel about this? Well, I want this. Well, and I get into the ego place of it, right? That all about me. And then other times it shifts the other direction. And that's when I'm worried about the world. Well, they have that. I want that. Well, what do they think about me? Well, oh my gosh, they said that about me. Oh, well, wait a minute. Everybody else is doing that over there. They're watching that TV program, or they're whatever it is, whatever they're doing, that. And this over here is me. That's off kilter. That's because my eyes aren't in the right place. But ultimately, when I get over here or I get over here, the fastest way outside of kind of, centering back to scripture and prayer and church, is the fastest way is for service, serving others, doing something kind for someone else, loving someone more, and showing them that, and letting them know that love is willing the good of another. So it could be small gestures or big gestures, or service through charity, but all of that makes a difference. And that's part of living an unmuted life. Definitely.
No, I think I definitely learned. I just turned 40 this year. So finally I learned what true love is. Because before it's like, oh, you're in love, you get married, or you love your kids, whatever. I think with kids it's different because you go beyond for them. Mm-hmm. But for other people around, whether it's relative, coworkers, it's what I was thinking, looking at my pattern, even observing other people. It's most of the time we love when people do good things for us, when they gift us, when they call us, when they do positive things for us. We love them. As soon as they do something that doesn't align with our belief or liking, then we kind of not too fan of them, right? Mm-hmm. So what I learned in the journey is I love them anyways. Doesn't matter what are they being good or ugly. And literally the word love, I see it in so much different light, and it's so freeing. It's freeing because you no longer have your feelings hurt because somebody didn't call you, or you're okay, like you were saying, they're going through their journey. And when you're understanding, it just frees you. You're no longer in that mode of negativity.
Well, you didn't put a condition on the love. I love you if you do this. I love you. Yeah. That's not love. That's use. That's using someone for something, but that is not love. And so there's a big difference there. Love is unconditional, and there's different.
But most people say that. When you say it, yes, we all say, I unconditionally love you. Do that. However, on the action, like I'm saying, observing, I mean, not everybody, but majority of people, like if didn't like, either they're gonna smirk for a few minutes. I mean, that split second. I'm not saying they stop talking to me, but still, that split second, this feeling of being unpleasant, or so I feel like we all somewhat, maybe it's called subconsciously, we have that condition.
Absolutely.
In a way, right? Like, oh, they didn't support me, or or they didn't do that, or whatever that might be. And I think that's something I didn't know or see, or like paid attention to. And like now I look at, it's kind of like looking at two pictures, right? This is before, this is after. What is different? And I think like loving unconditionally, like true unconditionally, like even if they don't do anything for you, like I'm saying, it's so freeing that I didn't know. It literally shifted my relationship with many people. Like even, my sisters in Kazakhstan, after my mom passed away, we kind of all felt lost. But since I am the youngest, I kind of call them, right? Call them. And sometimes it was hard for me. Like I felt like they don't look for me. Why do I need to look for them? Kind of those feelings.
Yeah.
But the more I continued to work on like I literally put intention. I'm going to love them and call them anyways, right? And the more I did, now I'm many years later, I feel like that work I put to it, it's like, how like paying off now. I feel like they are healing and I'm healing. But if I didn't do that, I probably wouldn't even talk to them in the last 5 or 8 years.
But it happened to you first, though. So the thing is, sometimes we get mad, right, at whatever. And we're like, oh, well, they need to do this.
Yeah.
Well, they need to do that. And we all do it.
Yeah.
But it starts with us.
Yeah.
You changed.
Yeah.
You said, I'm going to love you anyways. And I love you anyways. Yeah. And I'm going to act as though I love you anyways, because that's what we should do. I read a story about a deacon, and I'm not going to say who it was, but a deacon, and he's in New Orleans. And he said that when he got married, he committed to doing very small acts of love and kindness for his wife every day. Every day he'll do something small for her. And he got into that habit, and they've been married 50 some odd years now, I think. And he still every day does those little acts of love and kindness. Unreciprocated. He doesn't expect anything in return, but you know what? I'm going to bring you your coffee this morning. Or I'm going to, do a dish, or I'm going to buy flour. It could be whatever. I mean, it's just, but those small acts of kindness. I'm going to rub your feet. Every day he was committed to doing at least one thing for his wife, because that is a giving of oneself to another for their benefit. And we change. We change when that happens, because our hearts we're like the Grinch. We start out with this little tiny little itty bitty heart, and then we start doing things that do all these things for Maru because I love her, and then my heart grows, and my heart grows, my heart grows, and in the meantime, Maru's heart starts to go, well, wait a minute, that was cool. Well, all right, and then you start to duplicate those acts of charity because, well, your heart's changing too, and so it becomes a ripple. Yeah. And that is a beautiful thing, because if you're an unkind person, or you're not in that place, and you're driving and you get mad, and then you flip off another person, that person could they just lost their job, or they got in a fight with their spouse, or maybe their kids in the hospital, and they made a poor driving decision. We don't know what happened to them. They could just be a bad driver. But we're just going to say for the sake. So then angry driver flips off that driver. And so mean act to hurting person. Now that hurting person goes home, is angry, frustrated, and then their child's there, and that person who's hurt now turns around and says an unkind thing maybe to their child. Well, then that child goes in the room, they just got in trouble, and so they go in there and they punch their little brother. But that's the ripple. It happens both directions. Other side of the story. Person driving in the car, maybe got laid off, maybe got in a fight with her husband, maybe kids that's in the hospital. Another driver just waves them in and lets them in. oh my gosh, somebody did something nice for me. Thank you so much. They go home, their child's crying, but they're able to give that child a hug. That child goes in and hands their brother a toy instead of hitting him. You know, so these ripple effects, what we do matters.
Yeah.
It matters. It matters if you're kind to the person that's feeding, you know, waiting your table or checking you out at the store. We don't know their life.
Yeah. Now it's a great example of hurting people, hurt people, healing people, heal people, right? So which cycle do you want to choose? And like, again, going back to consciously, intentionally, and with desire to be the light, to be the part of, you know, improvement, or somebody needs you today, not your negative side, but the positive side. So yeah, it was a great conversation. Thank you so much.
You're welcome.
You know,
you put me on the spot.
Hey, you are my teacher, so I'm giving it back to you.
I'm not used to this side.
Yeah. Actually, well, I did start my podcast a year ago with your help. So thank you so much.
I'm proud of you.
As you can see, I am advancing and
advancing. You wrote a book, you have a podcast, you're videoing. Yeah. I'm super, super happy for you. I couldn't be more proud of all the accomplishments that you've had. You've put your mind to it and your heart to it, and you've achieved amazing things. But more importantly, you're helping others.
Yeah, well, that's the goal, to help others, because through my journey, like I said, I felt lonely, I felt grief, I was mean to people too, because I was trying to protect myself.
What we do.
But the journey is, like I say, hey, I want to be honest. Yeah, I can be mean too, but I am working intentionally every day to be the light for somebody, even if for that 5 minutes or an hour of their life.
You only get a match full of light, but that's it today.
Yeah, exactly. It depends how people accept it.
I have my flashlight on. Oh, wait, no. Just kidding.
Exactly. Okay.
We're going to let our disco light shine. That's what we're going to do.
Well, I really would like for us to continue our chats about anything else other than Unmuted Life. I mean, about everything, because like you said, Unmuted Life, or in my case, I call it Fulfilled Life, is all about creating habits that lead to joy, correct? So whether it's bad, good, it's intentional. So thank you so much.
We should do a holiday version. How to survive the holiday with your in-laws.
Oh, yeah. That I wouldn't understand, because I don't really have in-laws. I mean, my in-laws are
I'll let you borrow. No.
I can borrow your family. Then you run away from me, though.
Well, thank you, Maru, for having me. It's been fun.
Okay. Thank you for coming.